Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Deborah Haskins, and I am a board member of the Maryland Council on Problem Gambling. And I'm coming to you today to share some important psychoeducation as part of our Strive to Thrive series, which is a series where we want to equip the community and the public to gain some knowledge and some skills before they actually develop a major problem, such as a gambling disorder. I'm sharing on the topic, understanding problem gambling, not solutions gambling. And I am a licensed clinical professional counselor. I am an internationally certified gambling counselor at the advanced level. I'm also a board-approved clinical consultant that trains up the workforce as well as practitioners to understand how to provide gambling treatment. And I'm representing the Maryland Council on Problem Gambling. I'm very excited to share this information with you. So I'm going to start with what is gambling, and you will probably be thinking about, well, why is the topic problem gambling, not solution gambling? And I'll explain that as we go through this psychoeducation, because a lot of times you're going to see the title problem gambling when we talk about when people develop challenges with gambling, which is designed to be entertainment. But a lot of people in the community and across the globe actually see the gambling as a solution, not as a problem. And so that's why this psychoeducation, this information is important, because the goal is to help you strive and thrive so that if you are engaging in gambling, you will know how to gamble safely and not pose a risk to yourself, your family members, and others that you are interacting with. So I want to start with the first question. What is gambling? Gambling is defined as anything where you are risking something of value on an outcome that is actually uncertain. What do we mean by that? It means that a person is maybe placing a bet on a sports game. They don't know what the outcome of the game is. We don't know who's going to win or lose. The analysts are going to make predictions. And even though we may all have some skills around the game of sports, whether it's tennis, whether it's hockey, basketball, football, or any other type of sports, we can't say what the actual outcome is going to be. So gambling is when we risk something of value. So we may place a money bet. Some people, when they tap out of their money, they're using other forms of material resources where that becomes very dangerous. But then if people don't have access to money, they will often use anything that they can. So for example, young people may gamble with their clothes, their athletic sneakers, or their gaming equipment. Adults may give up something else of value. Individuals who are in the correctional facilities may give up something like their food, their commissary funds. And so people are gambling, and they're using something of value to against something that they can't really predict a certain outcome. Some examples are the state lotteries, and then we also have people who are gambling in the workplace on just lotteries that they have going in some of their businesses or in their places of work when, say, March Madness happens every March. It could be the Mega Million. That's a big one that people will gamble on. Sports betting is very prominent now, and many of the states have legalized it. And so we're seeing a lot of people are placing bets on sports, but also before the regulation of sports betting, people were placing bets on sports. It just wasn't regulated. And so we also know that we're seeing a lot more people because it's now available and accessible. People may also go into the casinos and play the game of roulette or poker games or other forms of gambling entertainment that takes place at the venue. It could be that they're going to a racetrack and watching the horse races and placing bets. Because online gambling is expanding across the states, in the United States as well as around the globe, many people are gambling online, whether they're gambling with poker games or other forms. Texas Hold'em, for example, is a very popular one. And because of sports betting, a lot of the sports betting is happening online. We also know that in many families and communities, people enjoy playing cards. They may play a game of spades or pinochle. And these are card games that have been going on for a long time. Not every family will gamble for money. They are enjoying the game of cards just for the social interaction and the connections and for the competition of the game. But we also know that many people are playing games for money. So, what are the key elements of gambling? This is important to highlight. The key elements of gambling is using money or some valuables that are wagered. And I gave you some examples before. Also, chance is involved because there's no guarantee that the outcome you'll know when you are in the moment or when you place those bets. So, there is an element of chance. There's no guarantee. It's a random outcome. A lot of times these games have already been predetermined with the algorithm that has been set. And another key element, again, is the potential to win or lose. And we need people to understand that not everybody is going to be a winner, right? Not everyone is going to win. So one has to be prepared that one is going to lose, and more people are going to lose than win because the industry is a industry set up to make revenue. So if more people were winning, or all people were winning, then the industry would not be able to stay in business. So let me define what is problem gambling, you might ask. Problem gambling is a persistent and recurrent problematic gambling behavior. Let me say that again. It's persistent. Persistent, where a person continues and it's reoccurring. So they're doing it often. They may be doing it every day. They have a system that they use. It's recurrent problematic gambling behavior that leads to clinically significant impairment or distress. And so what that means is that the person is gambling, they're persisting in the gambling, even though there's negative outcomes such as they're losing. They're now beginning to tap into other resources that they shouldn't because they're now tapping into their expense money to keep their lights on, to be able to be housed, mortgages, rent, whatever it is. Even had someone who told me he was eating cereal because he couldn't afford to even eat other nutritional food because he didn't have any money and all the money he was using was to gamble. And so that is a clinically significant impairment or level of distress where a person is not able to eat something of nutritional value because they are now using their food money to gamble with. And also is classified as a behavioral disorder. And so we see changes in the behavior that are of a clinical significant level that is posing a risk to the person. They are not able to function in their normal way. They are focusing all the time on the game or the next time they're going to play. And so oftentimes you'll see a loss of control. The person is no longer able to control their gambling. They used to be able to gamble socially. They went for a certain period of time and then they were able to stop when they lost. Now that they're gambling more and more, they have lost the internal boundary management of stopping and walking away. The person begins to be preoccupied about the games or the gambling or getting to the venue. Because of online gambling and sports betting, people are so preoccupied that it's disrupting their ability to focus on other things. So because they can actually gamble on their devices 24/7, they're more and more preoccupied. If they're working, they're having difficulty focusing on their tasks or their work responsibilities because they're thinking about when they're going to play the game again. They're thinking about when they can get to the venue or when I can get access to more material resources, money, when I can start talking to others in my family or in my friend community or in my community to try to get access to money, whether I'm borrowing, etc. And so they're so preoccupied that they're not functioning in a normal way. They're chasing their losses because they're losing. The game is designed, again, as I said, for more people to lose than to win. And so people don't feel good psychologically when they lose. And when they develop a gambling disorder or problems with gambling and they're losing, they don't feel good. They may feel a lot of guilt and shame because they know now they don't have the money that they need to use for the other important responsibilities. And so they're trying to get their money back and they're chasing their losses. Just imagine someone chasing you when you were little and running around in circles. They're chasing after you because they wanted to get something from you. That's what chasing is. And then what's really central in problem gambling is the person continues to gamble despite the harm that it poses to themselves or others. They're isolating more often. They are not engaging in their normal roles and responsibilities or identities. So if they are a lover in a relationship, whether it's a husband or wife, a partner or significant other, they're not functioning like they used to. And oftentimes the people in their lives aren't even aware that they have problems with gambling because why? Gambling is entertainment. And so when people around us see us gambling, they don't necessarily think there's problems because this is a legal activity. It's entertainment. It's socially, in many societies, it exists. And so now that the person is gambling more persistently and on a regular basis, they're losing more money, they're losing time, they're becoming distressed because they're not winning, they're not able to get their money back. They may really be distraught. And we even have people who become suicidal because of the harm that is happening as a result of their gambling. They actually may think and believe that it's better for me and the people around me if I'm no longer here. And that's why this important information we want to share, because we want you to get help earlier and sooner. And for those of you who are social and recreational gamblers, people who are gambling, we want you to know what is risky behavior so that you can set some guardrails up for yourself. And so this is a definition that is indicated in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. For many of us who are part of the mental health field as practitioners, whether we're addiction counselors or licensed clinicians, we would be looking at the criteria if we're helping to support someone who's coming in for help. And so when does gambling become a problem? And so I want to encourage you to think about this. Pay attention to some of these warning signs. A warning sign is a way of an early alert to tell your mind, to tell your heart, to tell your body, your spirit, that something is not balanced and there's something that's not going well. So these are some of the warning signs. If you're gambling more than you intended, you're staying longer than you intended, you're using more resources than you intended, you have maxed out your credit cards, you're getting payday loans now, you have not paid your car note, and so they're sending a repossession of your car. They may descend upon your home to take your automobile. You don't have money for transportation to get to work. Say if you're on public transportation, you're gambling more than you intended. You're tapping into resources that you don't have for the purpose of losing, and it's creating other more extreme negative outcomes for you. You no longer have the resources as well, and you're spending more time than you used to before it became a problem. And then another warning sign is if you're lying about your gambling, if you're concealing it. I know one gentleman who said he had separate accounts in his household with his partner because he didn't want his wife and his partner to see what he was losing and how much he was gambling. And so he was lying or concealing about his gambling. Sometimes people will leave and say, I'm going to the store, and they don't come back for hours. It's because they're at a venue, or they may have gone to the casino, or they may be getting scratch off tickets and just standing there buying more and more tickets until they hit the right number. And so when they get back, the person may say, well, where were you? Why did you take so long? You missed out on X, Y, and Z. The person may lie about what they were doing. They're borrowing money to gamble. That's a signal that this is a problem. Because if we're gambling and staying within boundaries, not gambling what we can't afford to lose, then we wouldn't need to borrow. When we start borrowing money, and then oftentimes we're not telling people the truth. I've heard stories from clients, and people have said, well, I lost my job, I got laid off, or this happened, or that happened. They're not telling the truth. It's because they have been gambling. They may encounter relationship conflicts. If you're spending more time with the game or with the gambling venue or at the gambling venue, you're really in a relationship with the gambling. It takes away your time, your energy, your investment, your value of the relationship. You can love the people that you love, but when you start to not spend time with them, that's a signal that something is not right here. And because now it's interrupting your normal roles in your relationships, whether you're a parent, whether you're a caregiver, whether you are an employee, whatever the identity that you are in. And then it also is a signal if you are experiencing financial stress. Now, again, many people will gamble, we know. They tell us, and we know this by the research, because they are struggling with access to material resources in their life. And so in their mind, gambling is a way to problem solve a financial pressure that they're under or a financial stressor. But the gambling is not a strategy for resolving financial issues. The game is designed as entertainment. It was never designed as financial strategies to challenges that we're facing. And so here is where we want people to get connected to community resources so that they can get the help that they need to problem solve issues around housing or issues around not having a job, etc. And one common behavior we see, and this happens to a lot of people, is they're gambling to escape stress. I just mentioned financial stress, but there are many other stressors. They're gambling to escape the stress or an emotional experience that makes them sad or makes them depressed or maybe making them distressed or stressed or quite anxious. It can be because maybe they're breathing through trauma. Maybe they're breathing through grief and loss. We have, for example, older adults who are gambling after the death of their loved one. They may be isolated. They may be really feeling sad and lonely. And so they may be gambling as a way to escape. We want to get them help and support, grief support or trauma recovery support. We want to get you the right types of support so that you're not relying on the gambling for the wrong reasons. So I want to invite you to think about this question. Think about, what else are you losing? I've just named a few, but what else are you losing? We don't want people to lose their life. And so these are the risk factors for problem gambling. Some of the individual risk factors to pay attention to is if you're experiencing impulsivity. If you know that your personality tends to be impulsive, and what happens with impulsivity is the person does not think about something well before they act on it. And so sometimes a person may be more vulnerable to become a problem gambling because they have impulsive behaviors. Also, I mentioned some of the stressors that can create problem gambling. Depression or anxiety is an individual risk factor. Trauma history, or oftentimes we see a correlation too with substance abuse or substance use. If you are drinking, or if you use drugs or marijuana, or you're using opiates, or you're using some type of narcotic, it can set a person to be vulnerable for problematic gambling. And some people who are in recovery actually for another addiction, they may oftentimes transfer it to gambling, because again, gambling was entertainment, but it has also the vulnerability that if you're already vulnerable to addiction, you have to be very careful about transferring to another potential gambling risky issue and problem. Some of the environmental risk factors include, as I mentioned earlier, easy online access. When things became available with technology, we saw an uptick, and we still see an uptick in terms of how many people are participating, and it has quadrupled the numbers of how many people are experiencing problems with gambling. Also, if you had early exposure to gambling, you may have been in a family where you had a parent or caregiver who gambled. We have a lot of research that shows the links between childhood, parental use of a substance, or a gambling in a problematic way, whether they had a gambling disorder or maybe that they gambled too much. We also see that that can set someone up because it's showing you social models of behaviors that you can also replicate. And we also see peer influence. If you're a young person and your friends are engaging in gambling or even forms of gaming, you can be also vulnerable. You do it because your friends are doing it. We see this even among adults. And we see it a lot, even including sports betting in particular. We see that many people are gambling because their friends are doing it. It's part of what we do. We're members of a tribe. We are part of this lifestyle community. We enjoy this type of entertainment because we have shared valuing for it. It's a lot of fun. And so that can influence someone to gamble in a risky way. And we also know that there's so much happening now with advertising and sports culture that you can't escape it. If you're watching a game, you're going to hear the analysts talk about what their predictions are. Or if it goes to commercial, you're going to see a lot of the gambling ads. You're going to see some of the industry participants like DraftKings or FanDuel or some of the others, and they may be providing bonuses or incentives, and nothing is free. So you have to really be careful and ask yourself, what is the risk that I'm exposing myself? Because if you're given a bonus, it's pulling you in. It's inviting you not to leave. It's inviting you to stay longer. And so who is at high risk, you might ask? We have a lot of good research that shows young adults, particularly between the ages of 18 and 24, with sports betting. And oftentimes because they're single, because their friends are doing it, because they have the income or the resources, many times they may be working when they are 18 to 24, but we also see it among up to 34 and even higher. But this is the risky profile that we're seeing. We also see at high risk men and males. We don't want females, or if you are binary, or if you are not a male, we don't want you to think that you're not at risk. But we do have a lot of research that's showing that particularly women are catching up. We also, as I mentioned, persons with prior addictions, trauma events, are, particularly if it was unsupported, that poses a higher risk for people. Because if a person is breathing through, say, a traumatic loss during their life, homicidal loss, or they lost someone to death, or someone they got divorced and they didn't know that it was happening. It was a traumatic event, or sexual abuse or physical abuse. We see these traumatic events, particularly that are unsupported, where it poses a person at high risk. And we also know that people who are struggling to meet their basic needs every day, as I mentioned earlier, are using gambling as a financial strategy. And so we do have really great science now to confirm that something is happening in the brain. This is a brain disease. And so what happens in the brain is when gambling takes place, and they've been able to look at brain scans, it activates the brain's reward system. And there's a word for this. It's called the dopamine. The dopamine, in other words, is the pleasure center of the brain. So even infants, when infants are being held, that feels good. They want to be held more. So when a parent puts them in a crib, they may cry. Or when they are being fed, that is tasty, and they want more. They want more. When we eat ice cream, we want more, all the other things that we enjoy. It activates that part of the brain that says, oh, that feels good, that's pleasurable, I enjoy that, I want to enjoy it more. And so this is part of the brain process when people are gambling. And it's similar to substance addictions. We're going to see a person have cravings, or you're going to notice that you're going to crave for it. You want to do it again. You don't want to stop. And oftentimes the person will develop a tolerance. What is a tolerance with gambling? And when it becomes a problem gambling, it's whatever they played initially. Say they used to play with $10 with scratch offs. That no longer satisfies them. And so they ramp it up to $20 or more. And so that means the person is developing a tolerance where they are needing more and more of the time and the resources to participate in the particular drug of choice, in this case, in this brain disorder, gambling. And they may go through a withdrawal-like symptom similar to other forms of addiction. It doesn't look the same as alcoholism when a person is using drugs, or if they have an opiate overdose, or they can't get access to it and they're starting to withdraw. The person may become more irritated, or more frustrated. They may become angry. They may become enraged even, and they may even develop violent behavior because they are not able to participate in gambling in the way that they want. And it is a compulsive behavior. And so that's why we want people to learn these healthy tips. What are less risky gambling tips? The game is not bad. It's not bad to gamble. Even people who are members of faith, religious communities, or have identities of religious and spiritual identities, or indigenous healing identities, they too can develop problems with gambling. So if you choose to gamble, what we invite you to do and really want to emphasize for you is to practice safer, less risky gambling habits. And what are these habits? You want to set a strict budget. What that means is only gamble what you can afford to lose. Whatever is in your budget for your housing, for your food, what your children needs, your family needs, your partners, you don't want to tap in to those resources. Whatever you're gambling with, be able to gamble what you are not going to be upset about losing. And you also want to set a time limit, because if you set a time limit, that is the boundary. Say, okay, I said I was going to do 1 hour or 2 hours, but now I'm here for 10 hours. That's not a time limit. So set a time limit, because that is a healthier, less risky behavior. And never chase your losses. You'll never be able to regain what you have already lost. There are no do-overs. There are no do-overs. And so you're not going to get back the money that you lost. And most people don't keep a daily accounting of what they're playing, what they're losing. And so they don't even know really how much they've lost. Avoid gambling when you're feeling emotional or stressed. That's not a good time to participate in gambling because you're already under emotional distress. And when a person is gambling, they're not going to be able to exercise good judgment when they're feeling distressed or stressed or sad or depressed. Do not gamble with credit or borrowed money because that means you're paying even more and you're digging a deeper hole than the initial loss. And the final tip is to keep gambling for the purpose as it was designed. It is designed as entertainment, not as a financial strategy or to get access to income. And so in Maryland, we want you to be familiar with where can you get help in the state of Maryland. The good news is that these resources are free. You live in a great state where there is a commitment and there are resources available. The Maryland Council on Problem Gambling, you can go to our website, Maryland spelled out, problem spelled out, gambling.org. The most important number you can call if you're feeling distress, you know that you're experiencing some problems, call 1-800-MY-RESET. 1-800-MY-RESET. And there you will speak to a well-trained, compassionate volunteer who will get you linked to resources in your community. This gambling crisis helpline is available around the clock. And they will also, in the state of Maryland, get you connected to the University of Maryland Center of Excellence on problem gambling, where we have a staff of peer recovery specialists who are certified. These are people who are living out their recovery from an addiction, so they understand what it means to be addicted or to participate and have these risky behaviors. And they will share their strength, their hope, courage, and they will meet you virtually, they will meet you by phone, they will meet you in person. However you feel comfortable, they are available. There's also free problem gambling treatment in Maryland through the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling or calling the 1-800-MY-RESET number. You can also gain access that way. And then also another free resource is Gamblers Anonymous. We call it GA for short. Just like Narcotics Anonymous has NA or Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, we also have a peer free support where it's led by people in recovery from gambling who are going to share courage, strength, and hope and give you the support you need to participate in less risky behaviors, to become abstinent if that's your desire, to be clean and sober, or if you want a harm reduction method. And GA generally uses an abstinence model, but the peer recovery specialist will get you connected. We invite you to get what you can from these meetings. And if you are not interested in a spiritual-based meeting, which is GA, Smart Recovery is a non-spiritual-based peer support program. And you can also go to, for Maryland, www.helpmygamblingproblem.org. When you go to that website, you will find resources in Maryland. It will ask you what zip code you live in, you type it in, and it will connect you to treatment providers in your community. Another good resource that I'm a part of, that I'm excited to be a part of, is the Evive app. A lot of people, because of the shame and stigma of gambling, they don't feel comfortable going to a meeting in the community. Even though these meetings are anonymous, they may not feel comfortable even seeing someone like me, a gambling counselor. And so Sam DeMello, who is the founder of the Evive app, is a person in recovery, and he is a technology professional. And he said there's got to be a way to help people wherever they are using their device. And so the Evive app, you can download It is a free subscription for your first year, and it has a wonderful supportive community. There's meetings that are held during that in that community. They also have a lot of educational modules, and we have focused on making it culturally responsive in terms of providing the support and resources. Another great resource in the state of Maryland is the Maryland Coalition of Families, because we know that the person who is experiencing gambling harm also extends to their family members. For every person who has a gambling addiction, the research says 10 people are affected. And so in the Maryland state, in our state, we can get you connected through the Maryland Coalition of Families. You can get that information when you call the 1-800-MY-RESET, or you can get that information from the helpmygamblingproblem.org, or also you can type the name into your internet server. And so I want to encourage you. I often will tell people when they call for help, the most important advice I can give you is this: stay in the process. If you stay in a process of recovery where you're getting access to gambling care, you will see a difference over time. And the biggest difference is you're not alone. We want you to know there are a lot of people who are going to partner with you to help you be able to be well. We want you to strive to thrive. And so thank you. Share this message with people that you know and in your communities. Thank you.